I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig. Welcome to my new series called The Pivot. We are so excited to bring you deeper conversations with people who've made really impactful changes in their lives. We're going to find out how they do it and how you can also learn from their experience. We're thrilled to be partnering with Signal Relief, a pain patch reliever. I've used it and had tremendous success. We're really excited to have you join us and learn more about how to make the important pivots in your life. Hello, I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig. Welcome to The Pivot. I'm so excited to have Alisyn Camerota here. She's going to tell us about her book, Combat Love, the shifts in journalism, and she's going to share some of the grief work she's doing after the loss of her husband to cancer. Alisyn, we are so happy to have you here today. As I mentioned to you, I have been reading your book and I can't put it down. It's such a page turner. Combat Love. It's a memoir that you did not too long ago. I'm just fascinated by your story, both as a therapist and just a person who admires your work. In fact, my son was like, "You're interviewing Alisyn? Really? I know her." He was like so excited. It was very cute.
Oh, I'm so flattered by that. That's not my normal demographic. Usually if you had said like my great uncle.
No,
or my
he's
dad,
26 and he's like, "I know her. I'm so excited." I was like, "I will let her know." So
wow. Dream
there you
come
go.
true.
New demographic.
Yeah.
But I was so fascinated by just your relationship with both your parents and just your resiliency and your ability to just kind of advise yourself at such a young age.
Well, thanks, Robi. I really appreciate you reading it. It was a real labor of love for me to write it. I'm so glad that I did. It came out a year ago. It comes out in paperback next month. So yeah, I was an only child. I had two very appealing, intellectual, but distracted, I would say, parents. And so, it was also, by the way, the free range 70s and 80s, which all of us of a certain generation remember somewhat fondly because it's the antithesis of the helicopter parenting era that we're in now. I don't like the helicopter parenting era, but here we are, So the free range 80s, we all were kind of fending for ourselves, but I was in particular, because I was an only child, didn't have siblings, and my mother was kind of trying to find herself. My father was pretty checked out, absentee. So yeah, I was having to survive on my own for several years there.
And I mean, it just really amazes me, Alisyn, because you describe in the book your imaginary cameraman following you. Like, I don't know if I could ever get as creative to think of an imaginary cameraman, but I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant.
It's funny that you say that because when I started doing talks for the book, when Combat Love first came out, I learned that not everyone has an imaginary cameraman. It was so ubiquitous in my young life at 4 years old and 5 years old and 6 years old that I didn't know that everybody didn't have some imaginary friend or imaginary supervisor or like imaginary. I mean, it was a cameraman, but I think really it was just somebody kind of installing some supervision over me because I didn't have any. But I mean, I only know that through my adult lens. I didn't know that at the time that not everybody has that.
And also focusing on you, because one thing came out so loud and clear was kind of this feeling that you were kind of in an emotional no man's land. Like you did have parents who loved you, but there were limitations. And so it was up to you to figure out how to navigate your life. And I was just so impressed with your ability to deal with just the challenges that come up for you. And I wonder, or came up for you, and I wonder, if that skill helped you with television, which is also a very tumultuous career.
I know it did. I know that what happened in my adolescence and my teenage years helped me become a journalist. Because when you have to fend for yourself, you have to become resourceful. And I'm very grateful that I was so resourceful. That comes in handy when you're trying to book interviews, when you show up at a crime scene, when you are at a terror attack and you're trying to figure out, who you're going to interview and where the next storyline is and all of that stuff. By the time I became a reporter, I wasn't that easily intimidated. And that's the silver lining of not having had much supervision and having to fend for myself. Obviously, there was a downside, which was, I was often emotionally struggling. I could have used help, when I was a teenager and an adolescent. And as you know from the book, I wrestled with despair. I wrestled with being broke. I wrestled with, a couple of serious bouts of depression that led to, pretty scary places. And so I would have liked to have, adult supervision and to have more attachment. I was always looking for that in my life. But the silver lining is that you can plop me anywhere and I do pretty much know how to survive.
Yeah, you will figure it out for sure. What's your relationship like with your mother right now?
We are close. She remarried, and she, at the end of the book, you learn that she remarries my stepfather. And when he passed away 10 years ago, maybe now, maybe 9 years ago, she moved closer to me. She moved several states over and now lives in the next town to me. And we're quite close. She did not want me to write the book because she is, very regretful, I would say, about some of the decisions that she made that did not serve me well as a teenager. And she wishes that she had done things differently. The book forced her to also re-examine her own life and her own motives and why she did certain things. As you know, there's a lot of family secrets in the book. And what one of the things that I learned, and one of the things that's helped me forgive her, is that my mother is now 85 years old. She was part of something that is actually called the silent generation. They don't, confess their problems. They don't open the kimono and talk about their early traumas and what happened to them, So she was doing the best she could, but there was definitely some family secrets that were not ever exercised. And I think that, in terms of generational trauma, it seeped down to me.
One thing I really liked about your mom's approach, I have to say, and I mentioned this to you over a text, was how she was non-judgmental. And so when you were kind of living this wild lifestyle, you didn't seem to be judging yourself for it. And I was raised with a lot of judgment and shame. And I was thinking, I'd be shaming myself and hating myself. And so I really like that aspect of your mom's parenting style.
I really do too. I really do too. And my father was the same way. I had very non-judgmental parents who really loved me and thought that I hung the moon. And that is great. If you have that foundation, a lot can go wrong. And it does in the book. But that foundation goes a long way. One of the things that my mother often said when I was in precarious situations or dangerous situations, she just said, well, I always trusted you. I just always trusted your judgment. And it's like, I think they trusted my judgment more than they trusted their own judgment, my parents. But that's also kind of a convenient excuse because, that means you don't have to parent. If you trust, your kid's judgment to always do the right thing, well, you can check out and be kind of, asleep at the wheel, which my parents were. So all that to say, I'm very grateful that she never, ever judged my relationships. I have best friends who struggled, obviously, with a lot of drugs. I had, love life relationships with people who, some parents might have gotten nervous about some of these, and mine never, ever did. They just thought that I would make a good decision, and they always liked my friends, and they saw why I was attracted to certain guys and why I was attracted to the friends that I was. And I'm very, very grateful for that because I don't have that negative. I hear people talk about that negative voice that they have in their head. Oh, you're so stupid. Why did you do that? Oh, how dare you? You should be ashamed of yourself. I don't have any of that. And I'm very grateful about that.
How do you think your parenting style was influenced by your background?
So I think it's more influenced by my era than my background because we're living in this helicopter parenting phase where parents are so involved in their kids' lives on the soccer field and in applying to college and in their kids' schools. It's so different than how I was raised. I don't like this. I don't think we're doing our kids any favors. I think, in fact, we're crippling them because they're not as resourceful as we were. If I were, had become a mom in a different era, I wouldn't be a helicopter parent. But, nowadays there's all those like anecdotal stories about putting your kid on a city bus and then you get arrested because, your under 10-year-old is riding a city bus by themselves, which I did all the time. And so I think that the positive way in which it's influenced me is I trust my kids. I have completely open conversations with them. There's no taboo subject. I just always thought that teenagers were going to, take risks, have sex, drink too much. Like, I got 3 really great kids, and I'm like, when does the rebellion start?
It may not. They may not need to rebel,
That's what's happening. It's true. I have these great kids. So we just are able to talk very freely about any taboo subject.
I want to switch to your TV career. The TV career, first of all, it's changed and shifted over the years. Like, things have gone more digital. And I know you left CNN, and there were personal reasons for that too. But I just am curious about your pivot in television to this next phase, which seems to be the new trend in media.
Yeah, I feel like certainly broadcast journalism is going through a seismic shift right now. So I rode the wave of broadcast journalism in, I think, a very successful, wonderful way. I had a great career. And then, in the past 3 years, things are really moving at an incredible clip. And I mean, I liken it to an earthquake. We're just in the middle of the earthquake right now. Things are falling off the shelves. There's all sorts of kind of destruction of legacy media and chaos. And the shaking has not stopped yet. The cataclysm is still happening. We're all just bracing ourselves, waiting for it to stop, which at some point it will, but it hasn't. And so I think that all of the places that we all relied on for our news on television, ABC, NBC, CNN, CBS, they're all being challenged by, number one, President Trump, but certainly not alone. And I don't even know if he's the biggest challenge. The industry shifts, the technology shifts. Now you can cut out the middleman. You don't need to work at a big institution anymore. I can just turn on my camera and have a conversation with you, and you can put it right out to your listeners, bada bing. And so that has changed everything. And what I find is that I'm really happy to be on this cusp of this new media stuff because it's very rewarding, it's freeing, it's flexible. It's very liberating to be able to do this at the drop of a hat. I do miss the, huge team of researchers, lighting guys, hair and makeup, artists, all of the people who build the sets behind me, all of that stuff that I came up with. This is a much more DIY moment. That's hard for me, but I'm grateful that I don't have to, kind of acquiesce to any corporate overlord who is demanding that we say a story, that we tell a story in a particular angle, which is happening right now.
And you are now on Substack, and people sign up to view what you have to say. And you also have a new podcast. You want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. So Substack is a great community. It's, it was originated by writers who, here again, the publishing industry cranks really slowly, glacially. And so people who didn't want to have to, find a publisher and have an editor approve what they were saying, you can just write stuff and people read it that minute. You just hit post, you hit publish and it posts. And that's really satisfying. So I'm loving Substack, and that's a subscriber model. Then I'm also doing a podcast called Sanity with my old Fox co-host named Dave Briggs. And we're just doing kind of topical issues, but without any of the veneer of broadcast journalism. So we can truly say anything. We can say however we're feeling. We can have whichever guests we want. It's a very kind of unvarnished podcast, which is really fun and different. And that lives on YouTube and Spotify.
Do you find people can find you as easily on YouTube? Now, YouTube is supposedly the next great horizon for people who are interested in media.
Yeah, it sure seems like it is. It's funny now. It's funny how fast our appetites and our sensibilities change. Now, when I turn on cable news, it feels to me very stiff. It feels kind of stilted. It feels overly glossy. And I never noticed those things, obviously, when I was on it. And now just having, started this YouTube podcast for the past 5 months, now my sensibility has shifted so much that I do think YouTube is where it's at. I think that kind of drop the veil, unvarnished presentation is what people are craving. But yeah, is it harder? I mean, people have to intentionally go to YouTube. They have to plug in Sanity podcast. They have to plug in Alisyn Camerota. I mean, I do hear from people, my age and older, who are like, I miss you so much, on CNN. Where can I find you? And I think that is hard. I mean, I want people to transition over with me, but I know that's a big ask.
Well, you certainly made it a great career for you, and you are so good at storytelling and sharing information and warm, and people feel very connected to you. And I love your co-host as well for your podcast. I'm sure it's doing very, very well.
Thank you. It's really fun for us to be reunited because when we were at Fox and Friends, so we were on the weekend Fox and Friends, and that had many of its own frustrations, primarily that Roger Ailes, our boss, had a very strict vision of the stories that he wanted covered and how they should be covered. And that there was always a lot of tension, and that was sort of unpleasant. But we did learn the skills for how to do a show. And so I'm happy that we can use that.
So what's the next chapter for you, Alisyn? Where do you see yourself in this next phase of your life?
Well, Robbie, such a great question. I mean, I am in such a period of reinvention right now, not only professionally because I've left my traditional broadcast journalism, but because, I'm grieving the loss of my husband. He just died 10 months ago. And so everything is totally different for me. Everything. My future is a blank canvas, and I have to start filling it in, and I have to start creating it. And I don't know. I mean, the funny thing is, if we can get philosophical for a minute, everybody's future is a blank canvas, but they don't know it. But I just happen to know that it's, you can plan the future, but it doesn't mean that you'll get that future. I'm trying to rebuild my life. I'm mostly concerned about my kids and making sure that they can get through their grief journey intact. So I'm all hands on deck with that. And then I'm liking, as I say, this DIY professional world. And personally, I have to figure out, where I want to be, what I want my life to look like, who I want to surround myself with. So, I'm in the thick of it right now.
I'm so sorry for the loss of your husband, I just want to say. And as you are creating this new chapter, you are holding other people's hands who are going through challenges. And I believe you will show us the way and also create a beautiful new chapter. And then maybe you'll write a book about it so we can follow in your footsteps.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do write a little bit of grief, some grief essays on Substack. If people want to go to Alisyn Camerota at Substack, I have been doing a little bit of grief work on there, just because it's such a crazy process, and one that I didn't know about until I was living it. So
it's very lonely, don't you think, Alisyn, in some ways, because it's so private, and, the trajectory is one day you could feel fine and then not. And so there's an unpredictability about it as well.
I agree with that, Robbie. And I also think that it's misunderstood. Grief is very misunderstood. I certainly misunderstood it before I was in it. And one of the big misunderstandings is that people think that grief and sadness are synonymous and they use them interchangeably. So in other words, if I'm smiling or if I'm laughing or if I'm doing a fun podcast, so glad that you're doing better. So glad that you're coming out of the grief. No, sadness is just one piece of this multi-dimensional process of grief, which is basically changing on a cellular level every day, completely different than you were before the loss, and the brain fog and the cognitive, complete cognitive reorientation and disorientation. And all of that stuff I would not have understood until I was in it. So yeah, it's, they call it grief work for a reason. So I'm happy to be able to share it, with people who might be going through it.
Well, thank you. It is a great service that you are doing, Alisyn, because you're right. Many people don't know about it, don't know the details about it. And so it's good to have you share your voice. We appreciate it. And I appreciate you, Alisyn, for coming on the show. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Robbie. Always great to talk to you.
And where can people find you so we can highlight this?
Okay, so Combat Love is coming out in paperback next month, but you can get it in hardcover right now, Amazon or wherever you buy books. And you can find me on Substack, and you can find me on YouTube and Spotify.
You're a great person to follow. Thank you so much, and have a great one. I'll be watching you on a regular basis.
Thanks, Robbie. You too.